So friends, watching even just a little bit of the Republican convention, one thing is crystal clear. Donald Trump's Republican Party is the pro-crime party. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, have you watched any of the RNC convention? It's a lawlessness-jamboree, defendant-palooza. Or, as Rolling Stone magazine put it, Trump's RNC hosts a rowdy celebration of lawlessness and crime. And that article begins, former President aide Peter Navarro, remember, Navarro was the one who gave their coup attempt a cute name, the Green Bay Sweep. That's my editorial edition. Peter Navarro, fresh out of a 4-month term in federal prison for defying a subpoena to testify to the House January 6th committee, addressed the Republican National Convention on Wednesday night, just hours after his release. And let me just pause there, friends, because you may remember the reason Peter Navarro was indicted, tried, convicted, and sentenced to prison was because he received a lawful subpoena from a congressional committee to testify about, among other things, the crimes of Donald Trump, just as Steve Bannon received one of those subpoenas, just as Jim Jordan received one of those subpoenas, and all three of those criminals, Navarro, Bannon, Jim Jordan, defied those congressional subpoenas, committed the crime of contempt of Congress rather than have to testify about the crimes of Donald Trump. Navarro went to prison. Bannon went to prison. You know, Jim Jordan, enjoying that position, that power, and that privilege, went scot-free, unindicted, not held accountable for his crimes that were designed to cover up the criminal conduct of Donald Trump. I hope someday that changes. Let's go back to the Rolling Stone article. The RNC delegates greeted Navarro with a standing ovation lasting more than a minute. Making light of his time in the joint, Navarro said in jest, "You folks just want to know if you can see the MAGA tattoo that I got in there." Navarro regaled the audience with the tale of how Joe Biden and his Department of Injustice put me there because the January 6th committee had demanded he betray Donald Trump to save his own skin. I refused, Navarro warned the crowd. If they can come for me, if they can come for Donald Trump, be careful, they will come for you. The crowd lustily applauded this convicted criminal when he insisted of his supposed persecution. They did not break me, and they will never break Donald Trump. Trump has privately promised to reward Navarro for holding his tongue and not becoming yet another Trump sycophant turned effing rat. That is a preferred, profane term that the former president has often used, especially when privately mocking his ex-fixer, Michael Cohen, to ridicule those who've turned on him or flipped under pressure from law enforcement. The Republican Party has long touted itself as the party of law and order, and did so repeatedly during Tuesday night's programming. But the unprecedented and inescapable outcome of nominating a man convicted of dozens of felony counts is that the GOP convention has become a defiant celebration of criminality and lawless conduct, a festival where obedience to the law is far less important than loyalty to Trump. Indeed, it almost feels like a mugshot is the price of admission to Trump's party. And to that very point, friends, remarkably or inevitably, official merchandise for sale inside Fiserv Forum, where the convention is staged, celebrates the trappings of Trump's criminal record. T-shirts and beer koozies are for sale, featuring Trump's mugshot and the slogan, "Never Surrender." Another vendor at the Outdoors Convention Fest was doing brisk business, selling a shirt reading, "I'm voting for the convicted felon." And another with the number 47 made up of a crosshatch of words, convicted and felon. You know, friends, I would say unbelievable, but it's perfectly believable, right? Donald Trump's Republican Party has abandoned all pretense of being the law and order party. Heck, they don't care one whit about the rule of law. Take this clown, for example, Peter Navarro, Mr. Green Bay Sweep. You know, I dealt with characters like Navarro my whole career as a federal prosecutor. He is a bit player in Donald Trump's criminal organization, right? One of Trump's minions, one of his flunkies, one of his little criminal associates. You know, if Donald Trump's crime crew was the mafia, Navarro might find himself at the level of wise guy, maybe junior wise guy in training, you know, the lowest level mobster. That's who Peter Navarro is. Now, friends, why do I say I've dealt with characters like this, Peter Navarro, my whole career? Well, I tried RICO cases, including a couple of lengthy trials that were part of the largest RICO prosecution we ever brought in the courts of Washington, D.C. And we had a lot of sad little criminal flunkies at the bottom of the criminal pyramid, guys like Peter Navarro, and we would try to flip them, right? Try to convince them to cooperate, plead guilty, take responsibility for what they did, and testify truthfully about the members of the criminal organization who were higher up than the Peter Navarros, the flunkies, the wise guys. And obviously, we tried to work our way up to the crime boss, the biggest criminal fish. You know, we are contending with the big orange blowfish himself, Donald Trump, as the equivalent of the mob boss. And we would try to flip them, and frankly, most of them flipped, but not all. Some of them refused to flip, refused to take responsibility for their own crimes, and refused to testify truthfully about the crimes of others. So those defendants we would indict, prosecute, convict, imprison, and we would move on to other potential cooperating witnesses. And Peter Navarro decided he was unwilling to flip. He would rather go to prison for Donald Trump. Now, there are lots of reasons that people make that decision. Sometimes it's because they're just loyal to the mob boss. Sometimes it's because they're afraid of what the mob boss might do if they flipped. And then sometimes there are just people who sort of lack a sufficient core of decency, you know, the drive to do the right thing that, you know, leads them to say, you know what, I'll take my chances, I'll go to trial, but I am not going to incriminate Donald Trump. I'm not going to cooperate. I'm not going to tell you what I know. That's what Peter Navarro chose to do. But here's the thing, friends. Peter Navarro has not yet been charged for the insurrection. He was simply charged, indicted, convicted, and imprisoned for defying a couple of congressional subpoenas because he didn't want to provide information about what Donald Trump had done. And that's a good start for Peter Navarro, being held accountable for 2 counts of contempt of Congress and going to prison for 4 years. But friends, I don't think special counsel Jack Smith is done with the Peter Navarros of this, dark chapter of American history. Donald Trump and his criminal associates trying to overturn the results of a presidential election, trying to ignore the considered votes of the American people. I don't think Jack Smith is done, not by a long shot. We know, for example, there are 6 unindicted co-conspirators in Donald Trump's federal indictment. Jack Smith would not have dropped them in there, virtually announcing to the world, here are 6 people who were Trump's co-conspirators, who were part of Donald Trump's criminal scheme to overturn the 2020 election, but I'm not going to get around to indicting them. Oh, no way. They will be indicted. Peter Navarro is not one of those 6, but those 6, that's just for openers, in my opinion. So Peter Navarro might have 1 prison term behind him, and he can go to the RNC and joke about it. Everybody can applaud his lawlessness. But there may be more coming for Peter Navarro and so many others. Jack Smith is playing the long game. But here's the thing, friends. Jack Smith can only play the long game on behalf of the rule of law, on behalf of the American people against whom Donald Trump committed crimes. He can only play the long game if Donald Trump is not elected in November. So as you've heard me say before, we, the people, have now been selected as the final jury to sit in judgment of Donald Trump between now and the November election. And we, the people, will go to the polls on November 5, and we will cast our votes just as if we were sitting in a jury box after having seen the evidence of Donald Trump's crimes. We will cast our vote on November 5, and we will vote Donald Trump guilty, because he is. And that will enable Special Counsel Jack Smith and other prosecutors to continue to go after Trump and all of his criminal associates, right down to that junior wise guy, Peter Navarro. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.